Okay, my latest book, Custody, is about divorce and child custody. But this is set against the background of, economic liberalized India in the 1990s. So that's kind of also what happens when, the middle class has more money, more exposure, more desires. What happens then? What happens to family structures that are traditional, that are joint, when individual desires come into play? Because traditionally marriage has meant adjustment. I mean, that's famous. In marriage you have to adjust. My mother must have told me this 50,000 times. Adjust, adjust, adjust. But what happens when you don't have to adjust? What happens then? So it's actually a story that has, two families, and the other family is also impacted by modernization, because in that case, that woman can't have a child. But, if you can't have a child, that's not the end of the story. You have to try IV, fertility treatments, that's not seen as, if you can't have a child, that's not seen as, in a way, the kiss of death or whatever. There's still things you can do. So that's the story. And I did have to do a lot of research. I'm actually, I'm a college teacher, or I was, I've resigned now. And so my way of writing is to do research. It comes naturally to me, and I feel more confident when I do it. So this kind of research was, okay, research IV treatments, research divorce and the laws governing that, research custody and the laws governing that, and research the ways in which cases are heard in Tisazari, for example. Research, well, there's a guy here that belongs to a big soft drink industry, research that. How do these foreign companies who come here, how do they think? How do they look at the Indian market? And in a way, it's like everything is for sale. Soft drinks are for sale, the Indian market is for sale, and marriage also, I don't want to say is for sale, that sounds kind of dramatic, but nothing is fixed in the way it used to be. It deals with two sets of marriages and the parents of those two couples. So because in India, famously, you don't live your life alone. Everybody around you is also involved, whether it's your neighbors, whether it's your parents, of course, children, of course, but everybody has a say or an opinion, or has some kind of interference in your life. Or what is seen, could be seen as interference, could be seen as concern, could be seen as love, could be seen as a variety of things. No, they're different, because one woman is beautiful and one is not. Beauty has its own dynamics. Plainness has its own dynamics. That single fact in itself makes the trajectory of these lives very different. And one is lower middle class, one is upper. But it's really the fact of beauty. No, not so much from people I see around me, but through endless rewrites. Each rewrite, I go a little deeper, flesh the character out more, and actually I think while I write. So, and that's why I have to write so many times. So, like a book can go through 14, 15, 16 rewrites, because in the beginning it's very bare, nothing is fleshed out and nothing is believable. Actually, when I write, because I belong to the realist tradition, I'm writing a realist novel. And is it authentic? Is this character believable? Would somebody in this situation behave and speak like this? Those are my concerns. And as I write, I flesh out those concerns and I make the character deeper, because I fancy that I don't really do black and white, but everybody is a different shade of gray. And because if you don't empathize with your character, if the author doesn't empathize with her character, then she's not going to do a very good job of, you know, showing her, even if she's despicable. Or some people have said this woman, the beautiful one, is so awful and so self-centered and she abandons her children. But I didn't look at her like that. You have to understand why she's behaving the way she's behaving in order to make a credible book. And that's what I did. I hoped I was doing with every character. I'm rather pleased with Custody, actually, because this is, I think this is the first book of mine that has, for a central character, a man rather than a woman. I mean, there's a man that, I mean, there are women also who are mean, but there's a man who figures from beginning to end. And so I'm pleased about that. Well, his name is Raman, and he was married to this, you know, this stunning beauty. And so he is actually central, because in all the other people who come in and out of his life, he is there from beginning to end. That's what makes him central. Not so much that his emotional landscape has a huge place in the book. It doesn't, but it's, he starts and ends the book. And when I wrote my first book, which is There With You, everybody said the male character was really ghastly, and how could I do something, write somebody so awful? And that kind of upset me, because I just felt that the test of a novelist is that you do create understanding for your characters. You don't do awful in that sense. I mean, that's a reader's prerogative to do that. And what a reader does and what an author intends can often be quite different. I mean, as a teacher of English literature, here we are interpreting texts that were written ages back, and each century or each place has its own interpretation. So books are endlessly, you can interpret them endlessly, and they should be interpreted endlessly. But as a writer, that's not my job, to worry about what the reader is. You know, I hope there are varied readings. That just shows that the book allows for it, allows for as many varied readings as there are readers, actually. A story I heard, my cousin is a lawyer, and she recounted this story as far back as 2002, and it just lingered in my mind that this would make a good story. I think writers always write. The minute you know, you send your copy off to be proofread or off to the publisher. So in fact, you finish it way before it actually appears, because then there's, as I said, the editing, then there's the copy editing, then there's the proofreading, and then there's the decisions about the cover, and so on and so forth. In that time, if you don't do anything, you're going to have major withdrawal symptoms. So you start immediately, and I start the very next day.